A very good evening to you all. My name's Hannah McInnes, for those of you who haven't met or seen me before, virtually or in real life. And I'm delighted to welcome you, as ever, on behalf of the How To Academy for tonight's event to discuss one of the most, well, we'll talk about whether he would describe it as this word in a moment, magical and yet often underrated superpowers that we all have at our disposal, which is, of course, breath and breathing. And I am thrilled that our guest this evening can show us how to harness it and make the most of it, appreciate it, and make sure that it immeasurably improves our lives in doing those things. So our guest is the author of the event, the book that has inspired this event, which I don't have in my hands because we haven't got the fortune of having it in this country. But in his screen, you have to make a noise, Jesse, so that we get your screen.
Oh, take a look, guys. We
There
have
we
it
go.
here.
There it is, the language of breath. Discover better physical and emotional health through breathing and self-awareness. So Jesse Coomer is an author, a speaker, a professional breath worker, cold training expert, I'm very excited to say, and certified Wim Hoff method instructor, and so many more things. But I'm just going to stop introducing you because we've got way too much to discuss to reel off all your accolades. So thank you very much for joining us. It's so great to have you with us.
It's so great to be here. Thanks so much for inviting me.
Now, actually, I just feel like, having met you for the last 10 minutes, I'm just going to ask a completely unprepared and unthought of question. You seem so good humored. Is that because of all this breath work you're doing?
Well, I think that life is a lot more fun when we get to laugh. Laughter might be my favorite breathing technique. So I would say that when we learn to use our breath, we can learn how to feel safe. And when we learn how to feel safe, we feel like we can laugh, we can enjoy the moment.
What do you mean when you say laughter is our best breathing technique?
I would say it's my favorite
Your favorite
breathing technique. Yeah. I would say one of the beautiful things about laughter is ultimately that usually it's with friends. It's in an environment where we do feel safe. It's in an environment that sometimes laughter is the thing that breaks the tension and reduces the stress of the moment. It's that thing that changes that moment. And it is something that we get from a part of ourselves that that is typically there to try to help us in each moment, and that we can share with other people.
Okay. So we might come back to the sort of other people aspect of breath
Yeah.
later, but have you always been evangelical about breathing and breath? Have you always known about the great power that it holds, or did you come to it later in your life?
No, I have to say that I was a person who most of my life I was a ball of stress. My whole life I grew up as I would say an extreme extrovert, but I also had what I would consider to be extreme social anxiety. So this is an interesting combination to have whenever the thing that you get the most out of life, right? The thing that is that big thing. I really want to be around people and I want to share my story and I want to share their stories, but I'm also worried about what are they thinking about me? What, and am I going to make a fool out of myself and all these things? And so for the vast majority of my life, I was a ball of stress. And I even tried to control this aspect of my life using, of course, the typical, drugs, alcohol, things like that as I got older. And it wasn't until my early 30s when I really even found out, okay, this breathwork thing is a thing. And it all started whenever I was trying to basically improve my life. I realized that the drugs and alcohol, they just weren't working. Well, they worked at first, right? they do work at first. And then I realized that, okay, this is not a long-term plan. And so I started to do a lot of the things that I would say most people are told to do. I wasn't sure exactly why they should work. But I started exercising. I started to try to eat right. I stopped the drugs and the alcohol. Occasionally, I have a beer, but it's one of those things where I was ultimately trying to deal with life instead of run away from life. And it was after I had been exercising, eating right, and a lot of these things really, really helped. A friend of mine introduced me to the concept of meditation. And so, like so many people, and maybe our listeners can relate to this, I sat down, crossed my legs, closed my eyes, and I was like, man, this is taking forever. I felt like I was a terrible meditator. And so I started to research possible ways to improve my meditation, that I could become a better meditator. And this is when I discovered, oh, wow, people have been doing breathing techniques for thousands of years to achieve a lot of these same things. And so I started that, I would say that was in 2013. And I still wake up every morning just fascinated at how this works. And ever since that day, I did everything I could to learn and practice and experience as much as I can. And so it's brought me to this day. And I will say that I didn't realize how much tension and anxiety and I was carrying around, and how many laughs I was missing out on because I didn't feel safe in my own self.
So is this something that you are, when you say you found this sort of lighter self, is this something that you are doing and that you advocate that we are doing all the time? Because you're talking about meditation. Is this something that you sit down and you concentrate and you practice a form of breathing like an exercise? Is it something that you do throughout the day, or is it both?
That's a great question. So it is both. And ultimately, one of the things that we've been struggling with since as long as humans have been humans, and I don't think it's something that I wish I would have been told much earlier in life, and it's something I don't think many of us really fully understand, is that our experience in life is not just what we think it is. Oftentimes we think we have a conscious experience and that's it, right? We're just driving around this kind of this flesh robot and we have this consciousness, and that's all there is. But the human experience is a combination of conscious and unconscious processes. And that's something that we don't really explain to our youth. We don't explain it to, I don't think most of us understand. We might have heard of, you have subconscious beliefs. We may have heard of unconscious bias. We might have heard of some of these concepts, but this is something that affects every second of every day. And it's a part of you that is you, right? It's not something outside of you. Oftentimes we think about stress and anxiety as these things that are kind of outside of us. But in reality, these are signals. This is a message from the unconscious part of yourself that's trying to put you into a state where you can take action. So when it comes to breath work, how does this interface? Well, my breathwork philosophy, the book that we're talking about, is ultimately about how this process is always happening. Your unconscious is always trying to put you in the right state, physiological state, psychological state, to survive and to thrive in whatever situation that it believes you're in. And this never ends. But what we found there's been thousands of years of practice, over 100 years of scientific research, and in decades in cognitive science, is that we can interface with this part of ourselves. And we do that with every single breath we take. There is a connection within us, and it's at that breathing level. And in the book, I talk about the autonomic nervous system as the Rosetta Stone of this whole communication, this language. And it's really, it's not just the CD set we got whenever we were trying to learn Spanish. At least that's what I don't know. I was trying to learn Spanish. I got the Rosetta Stone. Anybody else? But ultimately, what it is, it's a way that we can we can start to decipher some of what these messages are. And one of them is stress. One of them is literally the feeling of anxiety, which is when your unconscious believes, okay, maybe we're under attack, or maybe there's some kind of a strong stressor. And what's crazy is anxiety is actually, and it's been referred to by some neuroscientists as a superhuman power, this amazing thing that once served our ancestors very, very well, which is anxiety. And I know it seems crazy to think that, but really when we experience anxiety, we're experiencing an arousal, and we're getting all kinds of energy. But what the problem is, when we have this anxiety in the modern age, we're not in a place where we can run away from the danger like it's a bear, or our ancestors ran away from the wildebeest and things like that. Well, we're at work and there's a deadline. That's what, in our psychology, our unconscious is saying, okay, this is potentially a dangerous thing. So it's doing what it knows how to do, and that is it's gearing us up for action. And this can cause us in the modern world to have an enormous amount of disconnection between what we are trying to do versus what unconsciously is trying to happen. Your unconscious is trying to make it so that you can run away, or you can charge the hill, or charge an attack. Well, you can't do that with a deadline. And so much of what breath work is, and this is what I explain in the language of breath, is learning how to interface with this part of you, because it's never going away. You are a conscious and unconscious being, and we all are. And we are ultimately an organism that is designed for action. And it is these two simultaneous experiences, the conscious and the unconscious, that when they work together well, we have alignment. We have confidence. We're laughing a lot, and we're enjoying ourselves, and we're moving forward with confidence. When we're disconnected, we have rumination, we have runaway anxiety, we have a lot of what I often call the modern human condition, where it's that disconnection between the world I live in and the world that my unconscious is trying to help me to survive in.